Justice Mohammed Garba Umar of the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja on Friday apparently rejected the plans by the Inspector General of Police, IGP Kayode Egbetokun, to stop the upcoming Monday, October 20th planned mass protests by Nigerians to demand the release of the detained Biafra Republic agitation leader, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, but, according to the organizer of the protest, Omoyele Sowore, after the judge initially declined to grant the Nigeria police force an ex-parte motion to stop the planned protest in the open court, the Federal High Court judge, Justice Umar, reportedly granted the motion in chambers, imposing a ban on protests at Aso Rock Villa, National Assembly, or Unity Fountain in Abuja. We await a certified true copy of the order, which our lawyers will review. The protest remains unstoppable. While this is ongoing, the United States, U.S. Embassy in Nigeria has warned American citizens to be far from the protest areas and limit their movements in the Nigeria capital city, Abuja, saying, the planned protest may lead to disruptions and violence. Detailed of the court action as captured by Punch newspaper. The Federal High Court in Abuja has refused the Nigeria police force's bid to stop the Free Nnamdi Kanu protest, allowing it to proceed as scheduled on Monday, October 20, 2025. The Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, had dispatched police lawyers to the court to move an ex-parte motion against activist and protest organizer, Omoyele Sowore, in a bid to legally preempt the planned demonstration slated for the Aso Rock Villa. However, Justice Umar of the Federal High Court, Abuja, declined to grant the motion, which would have immediately restrained the protest from taking place without hearing the opposing side. The judge instead instructed the police to formally serve notice of their application on Sowore and adjourned the case until Tuesday for a proper, contested hearing. Reacting to the judicial decision, the protest convener, Omoyele Sowore, affirmed the court's decision as a victory for civil liberties and doubled down on the scheduled protest. In a statement issued on his X handle on Friday following the ruling, Sowore said, IG of Police, Nigeria, Kayode Egbetokun dispatched police lawyers to sue me, in an effort to halt the Free Nnamdi Kanu protest scheduled for Aso Rock Villa on Monday. However, the judge, Justice Umar of Federal High Court in Abuja, refused to grant the ex-parte motion, instead instructing him to serve me notice and adjourning the case until Tuesday for a proper hearing. The demonstration, organized under the hashtag Free Nnamdi Kanu, is intended to draw attention to the prolonged detention and legal fate of Kanu. The police action was seen as an attempt to leverage the courts to prevent a potentially sensitive gathering near the seat of Nigerian power. The adjournment to Tuesday ensures that the planned Monday protest is not currently constrained by a court order, setting the stage for a potential high-profile confrontation between protesters and security agencies around the presidential villa. Channels Television also on Friday reported that, ahead of the Free Nnamdi Kanu protest slated for Monday, October 20th in the nation, whenever controversies surround Rufai Aseni, the outspoken and fearless broadcaster on Arise Television, one recurring argument often resurfaces in public discourse, the claim that Rufai Aseni is not a journalist. Critics are quick to emphasize that he lacks a formal academic background in journalism, having originally trained in animal anatomy, but beyond the semantics of qualification, a deeper question emerges. What truly defines a journalist, and what are the core functions of journalism in society? As mass communication teacher, we teach students from the very first class that the media exists to inform, educate, entertain, and preserve cultural heritage. Journalists also play the crucial roles of agenda setting and acting as watchdogs, holding public officials accountable and amplifying the voices of the governed. The media's capacity to shape national conversations is immense. By highlighting specific issues and giving them prominence, journalists help raise awareness and influence public perception. It is through such agenda-setting functions that societies engage in dialogue, debate, and reform, thereby playing participatory role in the process of governance. When examined through this functional lens, it becomes clear that Rufai Aseni has consistently fulfilled these journalistic responsibilities over the years. His incisive questioning, fearless commentary, and commitment to public accountability have made him one of the most recognizable broadcast personalities in contemporary Nigerian media. A notable example is his now famous exchange with the Minister of Works, Engineer Dave Umahi, on Arise television. Before that encounter, few Nigerians had publicly interrogated the cost per kilometer of road construction projects executed by government agencies. While the minister initially dismissed Rufai's question as elementary, the issue soon gained traction nationally. In fact, subsequent clarifications by Umahi, and even a public response by Oyo State Governor, Seyi Makinde demonstrated that Asani's line of questioning had forced an important accountability conversation into the mainstream. Through this singular act, Rufai did what the media are mandated to do: hold power accountable, enlighten the public, and stimulate civic engagement. It is true that a formal qualification, such as a diploma or degree in journalism, is generally considered a prerequisite for professional practice. Yet, history tells a different story about the Nigerian press. Many of the country's most celebrated media pioneers, from Herbert Macaulay to Ernest Akoli, Nnamdi Azikiwe, and Obafemi Awolowo, were not trained journalists in the academic sense. Nevertheless, through passion, intellect, and experience, they became towering figures in the nation's journalistic landscape. In the decades that followed, major Nigerian newspapers like The Guardian, The Punch, The Tribune, and the defunct National Concord were edited by professionals whose backgrounds spanned literature, political science, law, and the humanities, not necessarily journalism. What mattered was their adherence to journalistic ethics and commitment to truth. Today, journalism is evolving faster than ever. The rise of social and digital. Nigerian Army Authority has issued a statement denying threat messages issued against members of the public ahead of the planned mass protest slated for October 20, 2025 to demand for the release and freedom of the detained Biafra Republic agitation leader, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, just as the organizer and chief campaigner, Omoyele Sowore, the publisher of Sahara Reporters news media, met to seek understanding with the former president of Nigeria, Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, who, according to Sowore, promised to visit President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to discuss the issue with him. Nigerian Army, in a statement on Friday, said, "The attention of the Nigerian Army, NA, has been drawn to a misleading publication by Sahara Reporters alleging that a Facebook page purportedly operated by military personnel issued veiled threats against certain individuals ahead of a planned October 20 protest. The report is not only false but a deliberate attempt to misinform the public and discredit the noble institution of the Nigerian Army." For the avoidance of doubt, the Nigerian Army has only two official social media handles, namely at HQ Nigerian Army and at Nigerian Army Info, which are duly verified on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram and YouTube. Any other page or account outside these verified handles does not belong to the Nigerian Army and should be disregarded in its entirety. It is pertinent to state that certain civilians and online content creators now operate pages that post military-related contents purely for the purpose of generating online traffic and monetary gain. Such pages have no affiliation whatsoever with the Nigerian Army. The NA therefore dissociates itself completely from any post, statement, or activity emanating from these unauthorized sources. The Nigerian Army remains a professional, disciplined and apolitical institution committed to the defense and unity of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. In the discharge of its constitutional responsibilities, the NA continues to uphold the highest standards of professionalism, adherence to the rule of law, and respect for human rights. The general public and media practitioners are hereby enjoined to verify all information concerning the Nigerian Army only through its official platforms or the Directorate of Army Public Relations before publication or dissemination. The Nigerian Army therefore urges Sahara Reporters and other media outlets to exercise due diligence in verifying the authenticity of their sources to avoid the spread of falsehood capable of misleading the public and undermining national security. Omoyele Sowore, in a statement made available through his personal social media accounts on Friday, said that, earlier today in Abuja, I met with former President Goodluck Jonathan to discuss the continued incarceration of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. President Jonathan agreed that there is an urgent and compelling need to address this matter decisively and justly. I thank him sincerely for recognizing the importance of resolving Kanu's case in the interest of peace, fairness, and national healing. Particularly assuring was that he promised to meet Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu to discuss this issue as soon as possible. With this, former President Jonathan joins a growing list of Nigerians who have called for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu of Nigeria has accepted the resignation of the Minister of Innovation, Science and Technology, Jeffrey Uche-Naji, who had been accused of forging the degree certificate of the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and the certificate of completion of service for the one-year mandatory National Youth Service Corps, NYSC, after he allegedly failed an exit course, virology, repeatedly at the university. Nigeria presidency, in a statement made available a few minutes ago by the presidential spokesperson, Bayo Onanuga, stated that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has accepted the resignation of Jeffrey Uche-Naji, the Minister of Innovation, Science, and Technology, following some allegations against him. President Tinubu appointed Naji in August 2023. He resigned today in a letter thanking the president for allowing him to serve Nigeria. Naji said he has been a target of blackmail by political opponents. President Tinubu thanked him for his service and wished him well in future endeavors. Earlier, Nigeria state-controlled media, NTA, had reported that the Minister of Innovation, Science and Technology, Uche Jeffrey Naji, has dismissed reports questioning his academic qualifications, describing them as politically motivated attempts to tarnish his image. The minister has firmly defended the authenticity of his University of Nigeria, Nsukka degree. Speaking through his spokesperson, Dr. Robert Ngwu, the minister said records from UNN confirm he graduated in July 1985 with a bachelor's degree in microbiology and biochemistry, second-class honors, lower division. He described recent reports denying his graduation as false, malicious, and politically driven, alleging that the controversy began after opposition figures took key positions within the university. Naji revealed that the Federal High Court in Abuja has issued protective orders restraining the university from tampering with his records and directing the release of his academic transcript. Reaffirming his focus on national service, the minister said no amount of political blackmail or media trial will distract him from advancing innovation and technology in Nigeria. He urged the University of Nigeria to uphold its motto, to restore the dignity of man, and resist being used for partisan purposes. In a swift reaction on Tuesday, Enugu state government denied sponsoring allegations of certificate forgery against the Minister of Innovation, Science, and Technology, Chief Uche-Naji, urging him to carry his cross and clear his name before Nigerians. The government, in a press statement issued in Enugu on Monday by the Director of Information in the Ministry of Information and Communication, Mr. Chukwuemeka Nibo, said it had no hand whatsoever in the controversies surrounding the minister's academic records. The Enugu state government dissociates itself completely from these allegations. The honorable minister must carry his own cross and clear his name before Nigerians, instead of dragging the government into issues that are entirely personal to him, Mr. Nibo declared. The Director of Information recalled that Chief Naji had invited journalists to a World Princess Ola Torere-Amaje Kadunmianiru from Ogun State and a Commonwealth Award winner who is currently pursuing a master degree in law has called on the federal government of Nigeria under the leadership of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to immediately release the detained Biafra Republic agitation leader, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, stating in a statement personally signed and made available to Media Newsroom on Monday, that 10 years of detention without conviction is a grave violation of the fundamental human rights of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, specifically stated verbatim that the continued detention of Mr. Kanu without conviction is not merely a legal anomaly. It is a profound failure of justice and a grave violation of his fundamental human rights, His prolonged detention exposes the widening gap between Nigeria's constitutional expectations and the daily realities of citizens. We must have a justice system that acts with both fairness and decisive strength, not one ensnared in endless procedural limbo and mired in public distrust. According to the princess, across the span of a decade, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu has endured one of the longest and most troubling pre-trial detentions in Nigeria's history. Arrested in 2015, accused, pleading not guilty, and never convicted, he remains confined in a blatant defiance of the most fundamental human rights principles. Where is justice when a man stands unconvicted for 10 years, while those charged with upholding justice remain silent? The continued detention of Mr. Kanu without conviction is not merely a legal anomaly. It is a profound failure of justice and a grave violation of his fundamental human rights. His prolonged detention exposes the widening gap between Nigeria's constitutional expectations and the daily realities of citizens. We must have a justice system that acts with both fairness and decisive strength, not one ensnared in endless procedural limbo and mired in public distrust. No charge, however grave, should ever eclipse the principle that every individual is presumed innocent until proven guilty. That principle is the very cornerstone of law and must never be broken, regardless of who holds power. As we call for Mazi Nnamdi Kanu's immediate and unconditional freedom, my heart goes out to millions of Nigerians, across tribal lines, generations, and economic classes, from Borno to Kwara to Lagos, crying out for help against armed violence, forced displacement, demolitions, unlawful detentions, untimely deaths, and the persistent scarcity of life's most basic necessities. Beyond politics, every life matters. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu's health and spirit are at grave risk, after 10 years behind bars without a proven crime. This declaration is an urgent proclamation. We will count every second, every hour, every day, and continue to galvanize until Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is restored to his rightful freedom. Nigeria now stands at a cross of roads, where history will judge the true motives of those in power. The eyes of the world are watching, and the conscience of the nation is restless. The promise of our democracy depends not only on acts of courage within the halls of power but also on the bold, united actions of citizens. About Mazi Nnamdi, Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, may have given a clearer picture on how some companies are apparently aiding and making more money from the ongoing war in his country Ukraine, saying, since the start of the war 4 years ago, some unnamed companies in the United States, US, United Kingdom, UK, China, Germany, Taiwan, Switzerland, Japan, Korea Republic, Netherlands are producing components Russia under President Vladimir Putin is using to produce weapons of mass destruction, to kill his people. This, Zelensky in his own words said on Monday that, in the 4th year of the full-scale war, Russia continues to obtain components for producing weapons. During the massive combined strike on Ukraine on the night of October 5th, Russia used 549 weapon systems containing 102,785 foreign-made components, from companies in the United States, China and Taiwan, the United Kingdom, Germany, Switzerland, Japan, the Republic of Korea, and the Netherlands. Nearly 100,688 of foreign-made parts were in the launched attack drones, about 1,500 were in Iskanders, 192 in Kinzhal missiles, and 405 in Calibers. Zelensky stated this in a statement made available through his personal social media profile on Monday, after about 30 people were injured as a result of the Russian attack on a moving passenger train, killing one person in Shostka district of Ukraine on Saturday. According to Zelensky, Ukraine is preparing new sanctions against those who help Russia and its war, and we have communicated proposals to curb the supply schemes. Partners already possess the detailed data on each company and each product. They know what to target and how to respond. This week, the G7 sanctions coordinators will meet, and we expect a systemic decision to ensure that the sanctions are truly effective. It is crucial to shut down every scheme that circumvents sanctions, because Russia uses each one to keep killing. The world has the power to stop this. In the fourth year of the full-scale war, Russia continues to obtain components for producing weapons. During the massive combined strike on Ukraine on the night of October 5th, Russia used 549 weapon systems containing 102,785 foreign-made components, from companies in the United States, China and Taiwan, the United Kingdom, Germany, Switzerland, Japan, the Republic of Korea, and the Netherlands. Nearly 100,688 of foreign-made parts were in the launched attack drones, about 1,500 were in Iskanders, 192 in Kinzhal missiles, and 405 in Calibers. In particular, companies in the United States manufacture converters for Kh-101 missiles and Shahd, Iran-type drones, sensors for those UAVs and for Kinzhal missiles, analog to digital converters for drones and missiles, and microelectronics for missiles. At least 50 different microelectronic components in each Shahd are produced in China and Taiwan. Microcontrollers for two separate courts in the Nigeria Federal Capital Territory, Abuja on Tuesday fixed October 27th and November 20th, 2025 for the commencement of the lawsuits brought before them by the founder and publisher of Sahara Reporters, Omoyele Sowore, and the Department of State Service, DSS, over issue of posts published on X and Facebook social media platforms that allegedly described President Bola Ahmed Tinubu as a criminal after the president allegedly said there is no more corruption in Nigeria while the president was speaking at an event in Brazil in the month of August 2025. According to Omoyele Sowore's lawyer, Tope Temokun, today, at the Federal High Court in Abuja, proceedings commenced in the historic cases filed by rights activist Omoyele Sowore challenging the clampdown on free speech and political expression by the Department of State Services, SSS, in collusion with global social media giants Meta, Facebook, Instagram, and X Corporation, Twitter. The suits are Omoyele Sowore vs. SSS and Meta, FHC, ABJ, CS, 1887-2025. Omoyele Sowore vs. SSS and X Corporation, FHC, ABJ, CS, 1888-2025. Sowore was represented by a formidable team of lawyers, led by Tope Temokun, Abubakar Marshall, Alexander Aketa, Dr. S.M. Oyaha, Dr. Maxwell Opara, Akin Sowore, and Akoje Sava. Representation for the respondents. Meta appeared through Mefesimo Teo Yetabo, San. X Corporation and the DSS had no counsel present in court proceedings. The court granted motions ex parte filed by Sowore's counsel for leave to serve Meta and X Corporation outside jurisdiction through electronic means. The originating motion against Meta was also served in court on Meta's counsel. Adjournment. The court adjourned both matters to November 20, 2025, for hearing. These suits filed, following the DSS attempted censorship of Sowore's social media post, calling the president a criminal, mark a significant stand against both local repression and international collaboration in silencing dissenting voices. Sowore insists that no government agency or foreign corporation has the right to muzzle Nigerians in the digital space, Barrister Tope Temokun stated on September 30, 2025. At a separate court where the federal government of Nigeria filed a 5-count charges against the news media publisher, Omoyele Sowore and the DSS had planned to arraign the publisher before the court. Vanguard newspaper reported that, when the matter came up, Sowore's counsel, Marshal Abubakar, objected to the charges being read, arguing that his client had not been properly served. He also noted the absence of legal representation for X. However, Meta was represented in court by a team led by Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Teo Yetabo. Justice Mohammed Umar, presiding, directed that Sowore be served in court, an order not opposed by any of the parties, including Mohammed Babadoko, Director of Public Information from the Nigerian presidency, has indicated that there is a plan by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to begin legal action against the country's former president, Goodluck Ebele Jonathan over sustained and continuous rumors in certain quarters that ex-President Jonathan may have indicated interest to recontest as Nigeria president in 2027. The Special Advisor to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on Information and Strategy, Bayo Onanuga, said Jonathan is welcome to join the 2027 presidential electoral race, but Jonathan will have his date in the court of the land. Indeed, the jury will determine whether Jonathan, who was sworn in twice as president, satisfies the constitutional requirements and is eligible to contest the presidency and be sworn in, if successful, for a third term in office. It would be recalled that ex-President Jonathan was one of the most criticized presidents in Nigeria, with politicians, including President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who was then a chieftain of the Action Congress of Nigeria, ACN, forming a coalition of All Progressives Congress, APC, to defeat the incumbent president in 2015. Currently, there is also a coalition formed by politicians in Nigeria, the African Democratic Congress, ADC, to defeat and remove President Tinubu from office in 2027, and lately, reports indicated that the former president, Goodluck Jonathan, is considering joining the African Democratic Congress, ADC, but no official announcement has been made. The speculation intensified after Jonathan met with ADC National Chairman, David Mark, in late September 2025, amidst ongoing discussions about the 2027 presidential election. And Jonathan's closed-door meeting with ADC leaders on September 25, 2025, fueled widespread speculation about his potential run for the presidency on their platform. In a statement issued on Monday, Bayo Onanuga, the spokesperson to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, said, "As we begin the march towards the 2027 elections prematurely foisted on the nation by the desperation of the opposition ganging up against President Bola Tinubu despite his glaring giant economic strides, we are once again regaled with a cacophony of voices, most of them full of sound and fury, signifying nothing, to paraphrase inimitable William Shakespeare in one of his classic works, Macbeth." One recent statement that stands out in its absurdity is Professor Jerry Garner's. The former Minister of Information and National Orientation, moving to draft former President Goodluck Jonathan into the 2007 presidential race, affirmed that the former president would contest the coming election on the platform of the discredited People's Democratic Party, PDP, which bequeathed a legacy of economic ruins, after 16 years of bad governance. Garner even deluded himself, asserting that the former president would defeat President Tinubu to reclaim power after 12 years. Professor Garner of the defunct MAMSER fame is free to delude himself and engage in his usual comedy. After all, Jonathan's entering the race would provide another job for the Niger State-born former university don. However, we should caution former Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Friday stated that many world leaders who do come out publicly to condemn the Israel war in Gaza, do privately thank Israel for staging the war against Hamas, and according to Benjamin Netanyahu, the world leaders tell me how much they value Israel's superb intelligence services that have prevented time and again terrorist attacks in their capitals, time and again saving countless lives. General George Keegan, former head of U.S. Air Force Intelligence, once said, "If the United States had to gather on its own the intelligence that Israel gives us, we would have to establish 5 CIAs. This past June, when Israel struck Iran's nuclear facilities, German Chancellor Merz admitted the truth. This, Benjamin Netanyahu stated when the speech was being broadcast live via huge loudspeakers that were placed on the Gaza border while the Israel Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, was speaking at the United Nations General Assembly, which, his appearance drew a mix of applause and protest, with some delegates walking out of the hall as he took the stage. You know deep down that Israel is fighting your fight. I want to tell you a secret. Behind closed doors, many of the leaders who publicly condemn us, privately thank us, Benjamin Netanyahu stated in response. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated and blamed the Israel war in Gaza on Iran, saying, Iran terror axis threatened the peace of the entire world. Some parts of the long speech by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the United Nations General Assembly are presented verbatim below. Mr. President, the families of our dear hostages languishing in the dungeons of Gaza, ladies and gentlemen, last year, I stood at this podium, and I showed this map. It shows the curse of Iran's terror axis. This axis threatened the peace of the entire world. It threatened the stability of our region and the very existence of my country Israel. Iran was rapidly developing a massive nuclear weapons program and a massive ballistic missile program. These were meant not only to destroy Israel, they were meant also to threaten the United States and blackmail nations everywhere. From Gaza, Yahya Sinwar dispatched waves of Hamas terrorists. They stormed into Israel on October 7th and committed acts of unspeakable savagery. From Lebanon, Hassan Nasrallah had launched thousands of missiles and rockets at our cities, terrorizing our citizens. In Syria, the murderous dictator Assad hosted Iran's forces, tightening a noose of death around our throats. In Yemen, the Houthis launched ballistic missiles at Israel, while choking global trade at the mouth of the Red Sea. So what's happened over the past year? We've hammered the Houthis, including yesterday. We crushed the bulk of Hamas's terror machine. We crippled Hezbollah, taking out most of its leaders and much of its weapons arsenal. Remember those beepers, the pages. We paged Hezbollah, and believe me, they got the message and thousands of terrorists dropped to the ground. We destroyed Assad's armaments in Syria. We deterred Iran's Shiite militias in Iraq. And most importantly, and above everything else that I could say to you all, that we— Justice James Omotosho of the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja on Friday ruled that the detained Biafra agitation leader, Nnamdi Kanu, has case to answer, because the Nigeria government prosecution team have provided some evidence that requires explanations from the detained Biafra leader. This, the coordinating lawyer to Nnamdi Kanu, Barrister Aloy Ejimakor, said the judgment of the court does not mean Nnamdi Kanu has been pronounced guilty. Rather, the ruling indicated that he should give explanations to certain evidences the federal government of Nigeria brought before the court. It would be recalled that the ruling on the no-case submission filed by Nnamdi Kanu that was earlier slated to be held on October 10, 2025 was abridged and rescheduled to Friday the 26th of September 2025. Justice James Omotosho also rejected request by Kanu to be transferred from custody of the Department of State Services, DSS, to the National Hospital Abuja for medical examination over alleged deteriorating health issues. The court subsequently ordered the president of Nigerian Medical Association, NMA, to constitute an investigation committee to examine Kanu's medical condition and submit a report to it in 8 days following objection by DSS to his request to be transferred to National Hospital for second opinion on his health condition. We had earlier in the year reported that the case between the federal government of Nigeria and the detained leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, apparently took a new technical twist after one of the lawyers of the detained Biafra leader, Paul Erikoro, San, presented and played 3 videos which the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja later admitted in evidence. The videos of former Nigeria Chief of Army Staff, retired General Theophilus Danjuma, saying, security operatives in the West Africa country, specifically, the armed forces are working together with the armed bandits to kill Nigerians, stressing that, if Nigerians depend on the armed forces to curb insecurity, they will all die one by one. Also that of Governor Hope Uzodinma of Imo State, saying, politicians are behind killings in the state. Lastly, and the most interesting video played at the court to counter the testimony or statement made by the DSS prosecutor witness over Nnamdi Kanu-led IPOB founding Eastern Security Network, ESN, allegedly created by group of youths in the southeastern geopolitical zone of Nigeria, often referred to as Biafra land, to fight in self-defense against Fulani armed bandits or terrorists that were advancing and killing people in the eastern states during the era of President Muhammadu Buhari, was that of the Director General of the Department of State Services, DSS, Adeola Ajayi, who is apparently the government chief complainer in the case, and the DSS DG in the video recorded and published by Symphony News Media in February 2025, narrated how youths at Azare community in Katagum local government area and Tafawa Balewa community of Tafawa Balewa local government area in Bauchi state, when the DSS DG was the state director of State Security Services, SSS, resorted to self-help and killed all Boko Haram terrorists that came to attack them without depending on the security operatives, according to the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, and its US counterpart, Donald Trump, on Tuesday engaged in a tough talk over the recognition of Palestine's state and the Israeli war in Gaza during the bilateral meeting both held on the sideline of the UN General Assembly in New York, where the French president insisted that Israel has already achieved more by killing the top militia leaders of Hamas, saying, "It doesn't work to dismantle the Hamas. This is not the right way to proceed," he said, while President Trump had reiterated and insisted that things will not work the way the French president had suggested, that the October 7, 2023 hostages still in the custody of Hamas cannot be honored with such suggestions. The meeting was held when videos of the French president, Emmanuel Macron, and Turkish president, Recep Erdogan went viral on the internet, where both presidents were stopped or blocked separately by New York police operatives as they tried to cross streets in the New York City over yet to be seen incoming motorcade of their counterpart President Donald Trump. The French president, Emmanuel Macron, called Donald Trump on the phone after his journey to the French embassy was blocked by police officers preparing for the motorcade of the US president, but that of the Turkish president, Recep Erdogan, could be seen quickly surrounded by his security team in a manner that makes the president look apparently in shock. The moment some group of New York police officers advanced towards them to stop the Turkish presidential team from crossing the road. According to New York Times, nothing frustrates a New Yorker in a hurry like finding that a street has been blocked off because some big shot is in town. Apparently, the same is true for the President of France, Emmanuel Macron. On Monday evening, Mr. Macron, in New York for the UN General Assembly, was stuck on a Manhattan street corner that had been closed off for President Trump's motorcade. The meeting of world leaders is, among other things, a traffic nightmare. At first, Mr. Macron did what many New Yorkers might do. He pleaded with a police officer to let him cross the street. "I have 10 people with me," Mr. Macron told the officer, according to video that shows the French president making his case on the street corner. "I go to the French embassy." But the officer politely held his ground and would not let Mr. Macron cross the street. "I'm sorry, President, I'm really sorry," he told Mr. Macron. "It's just that everything's been frozen right now. There's a motorcade coming right now. I'm sorry." Mr. Macron, who has engaged in diplomacy to try to end the wars in Ukraine and Gaza, tried again. "I negotiate with you," the French president said on the video. When that didn't work, Mr. Macron did what average New Yorkers cannot do. He pulled out his phone and called the President of the United States. "How are you?" he asked Mr. Trump, cell phone pressed to his ear. "Guess what? I am waiting the street because everything is frozen for you." It was not clear from the video what Mr. Trump said, but Mr. Macron chuckled and told the American president that he was hoping to have a discussion with him and Qatari officials about the situation in Gaza. The White House did not immediately respond to a request. There is no doubt that this week may be an interesting week in the international community as world leaders gather for the 2025 United Nations General Assembly meeting to discuss and take a stand over decades of conflicts between Israel and the people of Palestine, especially some of them well known as Hamas fighters, over territorial integrity and sovereignty, most especially ever since the State of Palestine was officially declared by the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, on the 15th of November 1988, claiming sovereignty over the West Bank, which includes East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip, and as at the end of 1988, over 78 countries approved the declaration, including Nigeria, that recognized Palestinian state barely 3 days after the declaration on November 18, 1988, and the numbers have been increasing particularly since the beginning of 2024 like never before, as at September 21, 2025. Over 151 countries out of the 193 United Nations members have recognized the Palestinian state, including United Kingdom, UK, which its recognition appears to be more disturbing to the Israeli government, with the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, issuing what he described as a clear message to the world leaders recognizing Palestine as a country of its own that it's not going to happen. The United Kingdom, Australia, Canada among others declared and announced their recognition of the Palestinian state on September 21, 2025, while countries like Germany, Italy, Japan and South Korea among others are yet to make their position known. In a video broadcast on Sunday, the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, said, "Today, to revive the hope of peace for the Palestinians and Israelis, and a two-state solution, the United Kingdom formally recognizes the state of Palestine," adding that the recognition is not a reward for Hamas, reiterating that the United Kingdom has already prescribed and sanctioned Hamas as a terrorist organization, saying, "Any member of Hamas will not be a member of the Palestinian government, including joining the security architectures of the Palestinian state." A statement by the Prime Minister of Israel Benjamin Netanyahu issued a few hours after the video broadcast by the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer. The Israel Prime Minister said there would never be a Palestinian state to the west of the Jordan River. In quotes, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said, "I have a clear message to those leaders who are recognizing a Palestinian state after the horrendous October 7th massacre. You are rewarding terror with an enormous prize. And I have another message for you. It's not going to happen. There will be no Palestinian state to the west of the Jordan River. For years I have prevented the creation of that terror state, against tremendous pressure, both domestic and from abroad. We have done this with determination, and with astute statesmanship. Moreover, we have doubled the Jewish settlement in Judea and Samaria, and we will continue on this path. The response to the latest attempt to force upon us a terror state in the heart of our land will be given after my return from the United States. Stand by."
In the face of the growing horror in the Middle East,
bringing you the news in a more digital way.